Hello and thanks for watching. My name's Matt Neef and today I'm going to be talking you through I guess a bit of a behind the scenes look at one of the tracks off my new album Before We Know. This is track 8 from the album. It's called What If and it's one of my favourite songs on the album, so I'm really looking forward to diving into it with you and talking you through some of the production decisions and I guess the story of really how the song came to be and how I created it. So before we get into that, if you haven't already listened to the album, I'd recommend you do so. You can find it wherever you listen to your music, whether that's Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube Music or Bandcamp, whatever you like. And obviously have a particular listen to this track beforehand so you know what we're going to be talking about. And before we go any further as well, I would recommend you listen to this session with headphones on. It's just going to make a bunch more sense when we start breaking down various parts of the song, and in particular when we talk about panning and stereo field and stuff like that. So let's dive into it. Like most of the songs on this album, and most of the songs that I write really, this song was written music first, so I basically had the entire structure of the song fully fleshed out before I even started thinking about lyrics for it. And I've actually got the original GarageBand session for this project open here. You can see it's creatively titled track 499. And this is the first demo that I started working on, and I think it was November 2022 that I started working on this particular track. The original idea for this really came from playing around with some piano chords that were a little bit more, I guess, creative than I would normally use. I'll solo some of those out for you now and you can hear what I'm talking about. Just some different sort of chord voicings beyond basic major and minor, and just trying to push myself a little bit to get a bit more creative. So here's how the piano sounded initially with those chords. You can see that's sort of repeated a few times there, and that was really the bedrock of the song. That would become the verse, and then we've got this section which is a bit different, which became the chorus. So those two main sections would really underpin the whole rest of the song as we went along. For those that are curious, the original chords here were recorded in, I guess, C minor, I think it is. Let me just find the original. Yeah, so I think it was just a basic C minor 9, I think is the actual chord there to begin with. And then in later versions, I ended up moving it down to A minor because it suited my vocals a little bit better. So we had those pianos to start off with, and then from that basic idea, I started developing some more stuff around it. So if we go back to this verse section, we can bring in the bass as well. And then drums. And then, similar kind of thing in the chorus. And you'll see that in the chorus, they had these 2 electric guitars come in as well, and I've panned them slightly to the left. So if I just play those guitars, here's how this one sounds, slightly to the left. And on the right as well, to make it sound a bit thicker. So with the drums, with the bass. Bring the piano back in. And so that basic structure carried basically through all the way to the final version of the track that you hear on the album. We've also got this piano solo that you can see here. So that section there made it through entirely as it is to the final version, and there's some other bits as well, and some bits that didn't make it. This section was recorded for this demo but never made it to the final version because it was a bit too long, I felt like. So yeah, again, this is the initial version of the track, the initial sketch of how I wanted it to sound, and it was starting to sound pretty good, I thought, and then I started iterating on that. And then probably a year or so later, after a bunch of revisions, here's where we ended up with, well, this is the final version of the track. This is the file for the final version that you hear on the album. And you can see there's a little bit going on, and I'll try and break that all down for you as we go along here. The biggest change to talk about from those early demos through to the finished version is the start of the song, which is quite slow. Here's a bit of a taste of it. I think how that started was one day I was just noodling around on piano with the chords that form the basis of this song, and I just tried playing them slowly for some reason, and they sounded like, just like this, and I quite liked how mournful and reflective they were, and I thought it'd be cool to use those chords in that way in some part of the song, and it seemed to fit really nicely to start off like that, quite slowly and quite contemplative, before getting to the faster, more upbeat stuff that we'll hear later and that was part of those initial demos. So let's break down this intro. We've got those two pianos I was telling you about, those chords here, and the piano solo that goes over the top. So that's how the song starts. A little bit later on, we get the introduction of a few more elements. So we got this bass line coming in, which is playing a bit of a melody. And there's also a guitar that comes in. And so that's all setting us up for the first verse. And I'll talk a little bit about lyrics and vocals later on, because like I said earlier, they came at the very end of the song. And we'll just talk through the actual instrumental part first of all. So when we get to what would become the first verse, which I've called slow verse here, we've got these piano chords that I talked about. I'll just play those. So again, that's those slow chords that I mentioned. They form the bedrock of this verse. And you've got the piano as well, playing these lower octaves. And you can see here we've got the introduction of this cool jazz combo electric guitar. Let me just solo these and you can hear how they sound. It's got a cool tremolo sound on that one. Oh, bit of echo there. Got cool tremolo happening. And so as you can probably hear, there are two guitar tracks doing that. One's panned all the way to the left, one all the way to the right. So, and then together. So having the two tracks and then playing them hard left and right creates a greater sense of depth than if you just had one track up the middle. But also having two tracks, playing them ever so slightly different, just by virtue of natural variation, you create extra depth as well through a kind of chorusing effect. So we've got those in the verse that come in halfway through. We've got the bass that plays throughout as well. So bring the bass in, the piano bass and the piano chords. And guitars come in there. So that leads us all the way into the first chorus. And in this first chorus, it's much the same instrumentation. We've got the piano with some piano bass as well. Bass guitar. Those electric guitars. And then some other more electric guitars. Here's how those electric guitars sound on their own. And again, 2 tracks panned almost hard left, almost hard right to create a sense of scale, depth, whatever you want to call it. And the kind of distorted sound here just gives a bit more oomph and a bit more impact, I think, for the chorus. So all together, here's what the chorus sounds like if we go from the end of the verse into that first chorus. So that's the first chorus. And now we come to one of the most interesting parts of the song, which I've called join here, or joiner. And that's the point where I'm trying to bridge the gap between this slower intro, which is at, I think, 120 beats per minute, up to the faster original section of the song, as you heard in that first demo, which is at 147 beats a minute. So you can see this blue line here. This is a tempo map. You can see the tempo of the song switches to 147 as soon as we reach the end of the chorus, and goes up to 147. And so the joiner really does the job of bridging the gap. And in order to do that, I felt like it needed a few instruments to kind of bridge that gap. So what have we got? You could hear there the jazzy guitars for a start, and this kind of building in intensity is something that a few of the instruments do here to try and build the anticipation and the energy ahead of this more upbeat section. So in addition to those guitars, we have this piano sound. Turn off these guitars. Here's the piano sound. And that's just a piano chord that I've played and then reversed so that it builds up rather than fading out. Got something similar here with these vocal joiners. And these are just vocal tracks, as you'll hear. And I've just faded them in so they're kind of building. We've got these oohs as well. There is some instrument making a bit of a noise here, so I'll turn these off, and the bass as well. So we've got these oohs that are building in. So that's, and then playing those with the 2 other joiners. You got the piano as well. And then those guitars. So that's really building nicely ahead of that section. And then we've got these kind of interesting ones, which are breath sounds. So that's just me. The second bit here is me just breathing out heavily, left and right panned as well to create a sense of width. And then I believe these ones are just that same thing, just flipped around, so it builds up into it rather than fading out. Got those guitars coming in that I mentioned. We've also got the drums coming in. So this is the first introduction of the drums in the song. So you can hear them with the vocal joiner there, the breath sounds. And then when we get to this fast intro, which is also part of the joiner, but it's kind of like our first sense of the full energy of the song before we get to the vocals of the second verse, we've got a few more elements to talk about. So we've got those breaths I talked about, we've got the drums coming in, We've also got these claps. Might be easier if I just select these like this. So that's 3 channels of me clapping. I believe one panned hard left, one panned hard right, one straight down the center. Yep, left, right, center. And then 2 like finger snaps, pan left and right as well, to create a sense of being bigger than just me sitting in this room recording stuff. I forgot to mention this joiner. We've also got this little percussion section. So you got the kind of shimmering there of the percussion, and then a gong when we reach the fast intro after that big build up. We've also got the bass that comes in. We've got some pianos that come in. So you might recognize those pianos from the first demo that we talked about. So the effect of all this is you have your slow intro, slow verse, slow chorus, the chorus ends, and then you get this kind of big build up of energy. You reach this point where the drums start, and then we kind of have this energetic section before the verse. So what I'll do is I'll play this. I'll again mute the vocals, just we can focus on them later. But this is the start of the joiner. We'll go from the end of the chorus through the joiner and into the fast joiner part before the verse. So we've gone from this slow part to this, using this as a bridge. And I thought about increasing the tempo kind of linearly across that section. So you can imagine it starting here at 120 BPM and going up here to 147 in this sort of motion. But I think it worked better going straight to 147 than having the drums at that tempo, because you've got the hi-hat pedal kind of setting the tempo from the start of the joiner, so it gets your ear ready for that tempo before the instruments come in. So then we have this fast intro, which again sets the scene for what's to come, and then we go into what is the second verse of the song, and it's effectively the same instruments as that joiner section, but we welcome back the guitars, so those funky cool jazz combo guitars. And you'll notice they're playing a slightly different rhythm here. And again, panned hard left, hard right to create a sense of space. In the second half of this verse, we have some ooze going on. I like to, when I'm writing second verses or writing anything really, just be making sure that the energy is always changing. It's always dynamic. Something's always happening. You don't want to have a verse that sounds exactly the same. And so one way of doing that is just by adding elements partway through a verse. And so in the second half of this second verse, we add these ooze, which just create another texture to an extra layer. So here's how they sound. So here's how it sounds with those ooze in the background. You could hear that they're 2 different notes I'm singing. They're a harmony of each other. One pan hard left, one pan hard right. And here's without them. With them. So it just thickens up the sound, makes it a bit more interesting, makes it feel like the song's progressing. And then we get to the second chorus, which is the first chorus, this kind of higher tempo, this greater energy. And so we welcome back some heavier guitars there, which you'll hear here. We've also got some, as you can see here, some shakers and some tambourines. And again, that's just about building the energy of the thing and making it so the chorus sounds different and sounds bigger and punchier and more lively than the verses. And so all together for the chorus, again, just leaving the vocals aside for 1 second, here's how the chorus sounds. We run through that a few times and then we get to the solo. Now we've already heard the solo in the first demo of this, but I did something a little bit different this time around where, as you can see here, this is the start of the solo and I pulled out most of the instruments. So we take out the jazzy guitars, we take out the electric guitars, we take out the bass even, we take out the shakers and the tambourines. And it's actually just 2 pianos, or effectively one piano playing right hand, one playing the left hand, and then this solo over the top, which is like a electric keyboard, and then some percussion underneath. So here's how it sounds all together. For the second half of that solo, you hear that the bass came in, so shaker comes in as well, adding to the claps and the snaps. We also have the cool jazzy guitars come back in. Which then takes us to what is the final chorus. And if we compare this chorus here, which is the first one of the fast section, and this chorus here, you can see that the instruments are more or less the same. Leaving aside the vocals, which are up here, we've got the pianos, we've got the 2 jazzy guitars are in both, we've got the electric guitars are in both, we've got the bass that's in both, we've got the shaker and the tambourine, we've got the claps and the snaps, and we've got all the drums. So that's how it starts. Is the same, but then we've got a couple more instruments here. We've got this other electric guitar. It's called Heartbroken, which is just the name of the particular preset that comes in Logic. So I'll add the other guitars to that. And here's the jazzy guitars. And the bass, piano, shaker and tambourine, claps and snaps, and then the whole lot. So you would have noticed there too that we have some more oohs going on, just again to thicken it up compared to the first chorus in the fast section. So here's what they sound like. So we've got these 2 tracks, A and B, playing or singing the same note, panned hard left hand and hard right, and then we've got this third one which is singing a harmony above it. And then you'll notice that there's another guitar about to come in here as well. So we've got all these elements that are just continuously building. The choruses are getting bigger and feeling more energetic, more dynamic as we go, which is, to my mind at least, what you want. You want it to be feeling bigger and bigger as you go along. And that's how the second chorus ends. And then we get to what I've called the percussion outro. And for those of you that have listened to some of my stuff before, or even just listened to this album, you'll know that I quite enjoy putting, I guess, extra little sections at the end of songs, kind of jamming, I guess, on an idea or expanding on something or taking it in a slightly different direction. And it really felt like the groove of this one lent itself nicely to just being pulled right back and just focusing on that groove rather than the thing in its entirety. So here's where I ended up, and then I'll break down the individual elements for you. So that gives you a sense of it. The foundation for that is really drums. Let's play the first part of this. So you got those drums, and then you've got this cool percussion, which is 2 tracks here, but this is effectively me playing a percussion patch, I guess, or percussion library in Logic with my piano keyboard, and triggering a whole bunch of different samples and layering it up to make it sound cool. So we've got 2 tracks of me doing that. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the 2 together. Here's all that with the claps and the snaps added. And if we add all the drums, add some tambourine, add the shaker, add the bass, and then you might have heard at the start of this section, it's actually the guitars that started off. So these ones, which the first one carries over from the chorus, and this second one is new. So here's the new one. Here's the 2 together. All together. Bass comes in halfway through there, and then it builds again for the last time through. So at that point we add in these 2 jazzy guitars again, playing a different riff slightly. Again, 2 tracks, one left and right, put together. Then another heavier electric guitar. And then all together you get this. And really that's how the track ends. So the entirety of that instrumental piece, that whole track, every part of it was basically developed by the time I even started thinking about adding lyrics or adding vocals to it. Which is often the case. I'll often get a song to a point where it's more or less finished, and then I guess render a version of this into an audio file and take it away with me somewhere else to listen to it, away from the computer where I feel a need to tinker with stuff endlessly. If I take it away and then just listen to it, then I can start to work out what the song is about and try and write some lyrics for this and try and tell a story with it. And in the case of this particular song, I was in France, in Paris, in August 2023, so August last year. Had just been on a work trip and was about to fly home, and I had a day in Paris just to myself, and sitting down by the Seine, just kind of going through some songs and trying to work out how to write some lyrics for these songs. And this was one of them. And I sort of found myself stumbling upon this idea of, not too dissimilar to my own situation, but somebody being away from home, away from family, and in a foreign place, and wrestling with the idea of enjoying the freedom of being away, but also feeling a sense of need to be back home. I tried writing it from the first person, but it didn't really feel like it was working too well for me. So I fiddled around with it a little bit and found it a lot easier to write it as a third person narrative. And I felt once I was able to create this character in my mind, it was a lot easier to construct this world of hers that I could then expand on. So we moved her from the Seine in Paris, where I was, to the Thames in London, and I imagined her finishing some boring work conference that had been a week long, and then just kind of sitting, there in some cafe or restaurant or bar by the Thames, just kind of completely wiped out from a week of bad working, and trying to make the most of her time before going back home, but also, just feeling like she wanted to get home, but she didn't want to get home, and just kind of exploring that idea a little bit. And it kind of came pretty easily from there once I had that idea and was able to start developing the lyrics and the story idea from that. And so going back to the first verse, here's what we ended up with and how it sounds in that first slow contemplative verse.
And so she finds herself by the Thames again, another week from hell, finally at an end. With a glass of bad red and a vacant stare, she feels the wind cut through, but she isn't there. And there's nothing else that she'd rather do than sit exactly there and enjoy the view. But in the back of her head there's a little voice that keeps on pushing her towards a different choice.
And speaking of little voices in the back of your head, there's, as you can see, some backing vocals that go on in certain parts of this verse. So here's how they sound on their own. Whoop.
Nothing else that she'd rather do.
Here's how they sound with that vocal, the lead vocal.
And there's nothing else that she'd rather do than sit exactly. But in the back of her head there's a little voice.
It's just some cheeky harmonies over the top there. And then we've got the chorus, which has no backing vocals at all. It's just that one vocal track.
She'll watch the boats pass by, the runners and the riders too.
So pretty simple, unadorned vocal, really. We've talked through the joiner stuff with all the vocal tracks. We get to this first fast verse, which is effectively the second verse of the song. And as I touched on before, there's a bit more going on vocally there. So we've got the lead vocal track here. We've got these backing vocals again.
Not like she really wants to stay. Still she's in no rush to be on her way.
Some ooze.
So she wanders down to the Thames again, finds herself a new seat and a different red.
And I've boosted the volume there of the backing vocals just so they're a bit clearer in the mix, but it's just one lead vocal track, one backing vocal there as well, just to give it a bit of flavour. And then we get to this fast chorus, or the first chorus in the faster section of the song. And you can see we've got two vocal tracks happening now. So here's how they sound. Here's how everything sounds together for that chorus.
She'll watch the boats pass by, the runners and the riders too.
So vocally we've got these two lead tracks.
She'll watch the boats pass by, the runners and the riders too.
And you might have noticed there's a third track here, and that's me singing the higher octave.
She'll watch the boats pass by, the runners and the riders too.
Bit of falsetto action.
What if what could have been? What if it's what she wanted to? Is time's a luxury?
And that's more or less identical in what is the final chorus of the song with those 3 tracks.
She'll watch the boats
Except here we've got these
pass
oohs
by,
going.
the runners and the riders too. What if what could have been? What if?
Some cheeky ooh-la-las.
She knows when she gets back. She knows she'll miss her time alone.
And then to the percussion outro. And that's basically it. You can see the song in its entirety here, all the different elements, all the vocals at the top here, the backing vocals, the vocal joiner, all the pianos in here, got the guitars through the middle here, the percussion, and the drums right down the bottom. So looks like a lot. When you break it down section by section, it's actually not too many things going on, but I think overall I'm really happy with how this song turned out. I think starting from a place of wanting to challenge myself with the chords that I was using on the piano through to developing this kind of 2-section arrangement, slower section into a faster section. I really like how that turned out. I think the story is cool. I think the energy of it's cool. And I really like that percussion outro. I think it's turned out really nicely. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that interesting or you learnt something along the way. If you haven't already listened to the album in its entirety, I'd encourage you to do so wherever you listen to your music. If you've got any questions about this track or any other tracks that are on the album, more than happy to answer them however I can. If you want to see more of these breakdowns, there's Logic session breakdowns, please let me know. More than happy to do them. You can just hit me up in the comments on this video or on social media, wherever you like. But until next time, thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.